Well, hi everyone, and welcome to your RTB, your Resilience Toolbox. I'm very happy today to have Jason van Slot joining us. Hi there, Jason.
Thanks, Nikki, for having me on the show, Nikki.
Jason is a young man from here in Cape Town who has quite a life journey that has really inspired me and just made me think there's a lot of lessons in here that we can all learn from. And I was really excited when Jason was available to come and share some of his experiences with us. And I'm not going to give any of them away. I'm going to hand over the baton to you, Jason. Jason's motto for life is don't feed the wrong wolf. So Jason, I wonder if you can explain to our listeners, give us a little bit of insight to this journey of yours.
Sure. So the idea of choosing the correct wolf, it comes from a Cherokee saying. There was a grandfather and he's speaking to his grandson. And the grandfather says to his grandson, there's this terrible fight that's going on inside of me. And there's a good wolf who's happiness and hope and compassion and love. And there's also another wolf that's envy, and he's self-pity and self-doubt. And then the young boy asks, which wolf will win? And the grandfather says, the wolf that you choose to feed. So yes, it's very well saying that, but life, it's not easy and it is difficult. And before entering this world, nobody gets to say, hey, I'm going to choose the cards that are dealt to me. Myself, when I was brought into this world, I was given a blessing or a curse, depending how you want to look at it. I was born with cystic fibrosis. It's a life-threatening genetic lung condition. And it slowly causes your organs to malfunction and fail. And predominantly it affects your lungs and your digestive system. So what happens is with your lungs is that there's this excess of mucus that builds up. And you can think of it like syrup almost. So if you were to breathe in and fill your lungs with syrup and then breathe out, and you're coating your lungs with this like layer of syrup and trying to breathe through that. And this causes a breeding ground for bacteria, which causes these reoccurring lung infections. And it's very difficult to get rid of them. And then what eventually happens is these infections cause scarring on your lungs, and it's permanent lung damage. So you can't reuse that part of your lung anymore. And the whole idea is to keep that as healthy as possible and have as least amount of lung infections as possible so that you can keep that bit of your lung working. Then also there's another side of your digestive system. So what happens here is this thick mucus, it's not only in your lungs, it's your entire body that's covered with mucus. In fact, everybody's bodies are made up with mucus. It's part of your how you live and how you function. With me, it's much thicker. So with my digestive system, the mucus is so thick that it blocks the digestive enzymes from actually getting to my stomach. So I don't absorb most of what I eat. And I have to take enzymes that help me digest what I eat, but it doesn't do the full job. And because of this, there's lots of other complications that go into diabetes, osteoporosis, and malnutrition. And it's eventually, like I said, all your organs eventually malfunction and fail. I'm 25 years old, and as a reference, there's a 37-year life expectancy for cystic fibrosis. And when I was born, the doctors gave my parents a life expectancy of 10. So it really is, there's always this overbearing shadow of, in the CF community of this negativity. But for me, it's about looking at, what do you have and what's the goodness that you have in your life, and you're trying to find ways of getting through these obstacles and overcoming them. And and having dreams and going to chase them, because at the end of the day, you only have one life, and you can't just sit there saying, I've got this condition, I've got all these negative things going on around me. I'm going to sit and mope and like spend my life being sad. You can, yes, you have these complications, but you can look for ways to overcome them and ways to get around them. And yes, it's not always the easiest thing to do, but there are ways to persevere and get through it and get to the other side and go and chase these dreams that you have. And yeah, my parents, they always instilled the sense of living a full life, and always dreaming and going to achieve them. I mean, if you would have asked me, ironically, at the age of 10, when I was meant to have, died, if you asked me what I wanted to be when I was older, I would have said, I would have took you dead in the eyes and said, I want to be a professional soccer player. And like, that was just the sense of how my parents brought me up, having this positive energy where you don't give the disease the power to control you or things to limit you, and I think I owe a lot of that mentality from my parents. They played a huge role, just the way that they brought me up in how I've gone on to achieve certain things or go on to the way I view obstacles and view things.
Because you've done some quite amazing, or had some quite amazing, incredible achievements, haven't you? Especially in the sports world, that kind of defied what everybody, or not what everybody, what people perceived. Many people would have perceived, or the medical world for certain, were like this will never happen. And you managed to do things that those of us who don't even struggle with breathing and many other things have not come anywhere close to doing, and let alone believing that we can actually do it. So just tell us a little bit about some of those achievements.
So the first achievement that I did was the Cape Epic, which is a 8-day mountain biking stage race. It's the toughest mountain biking race in the world. So just as a perspective, you're doing anywhere between 80 to 130 kilometers every single day cycling. So think of it doing an August a day. And then the elevation, so the amount of climbing that you do of uphill is equivalent to doing anywhere between 2.5 Table Mountains to 3 Table Mountains. So you're doing that height over that distance. So think of it doing an August every single day for 8 days in a row. You're climbing 2 to 3 times more the amount of climbing, and it's off-road. So that was the first goal that I wanted to do. And it took a long time for me to actually get to the point of being ready from an emotional side. So
what age were you? Sorry, what age were you when you started the idea of wanting to do that? And what age when you did it?
So my dad did it when I was 13. And then when I was 17, we had a school project. So I went to Waldorf, and we have a project where you have to dedicate 6 months to something that you want to do, to a passion, learn something. And I wanted to do the epic from the age of 17. But the thing is, you had to be 19 to do it. So I wasn't allowed to do it. So instead, I cycled from Cape Town to Knysna as a little preparation to see if I could do that over a week. So then eventually the epic came. But the thing, what people don't realize is a lot of the achievements came way before that, and just staying healthy enough to even consider doing this event. I mean, there was so much work in the background. So people say, "Oh, wow, you've done this achievement," But it took 20 years of maintaining my health, keeping me healthy, routinely doing medication, physiotherapy, and a lot of work from my parents as well. and being insightful about other challenges that people wouldn't necessarily realize. So just starting it was a huge achievement. And then I did that when I was 20, and it was a race. It's a 2-person race, so you have to do it with a teammate. And I did it with a friend from Germany, and it's quite ironic that his dad is a medical doctor. And when he was telling him about doing this with someone with CF, his dad was like, "Why are you doing this? Like you're wasting your time." He said, "No, this is physically impossible." And he had this preconceived idea that it was impossible, but he never met me, and we had never spoken at all on the phone. It's just, he had this preconceived idea that this is the way it is with cystic fibrosis. And it was, on the flip side, the reason why I was doing the epic was to show people that, there's the two rules. You can still dream and go and chase these dreams. And that's the main reason why I did it, is to follow my dream and show people that, yes, despite having obstacles and these negative connotations about the disease, you can still chase these dreams. And we finished the race, and it was a world's first for the condition.
I am interested, rewind to you at 13 when your dad did it. And I wonder what your thoughts were there. Did you think this would ever be possible for you? Where was your mind with it? Because it must have dropped a little something in your head for that still to be there at the age of 17 and eventually to turn into what it did.
So I was actually a soccer player back in the day when I was 13 or so. So my dad did it, and the year before that, my uncle did the race. So there was always this, I knew there was this the race that was happening, and my dad asked me that when he finished, what do you think of me doing this? I said, "No, you'd be mad. This sounds way too difficult. I would never even think of doing this." And at that stage, it was, it's still something that was beyond me, or it was impossible. I would never be able to do this. I was just coming to know of the epic and what the magnitude of the race. And so afterwards, going back to that test run that I did from Cape Town to Knysna, we present that project to a hall of people. Now, my entire childhood, I didn't tell my class that I had this condition. I didn't want them to know because I felt ashamed or insecure about it. So I didn't want to, so for example, on the soccer field, I didn't want to be seen as a liability or the last person to be chosen. So I hid it a lot from them. And in the very last sentence of my speech, I said, thank you to my doctors for all the support. And yes, I've got this condition. And I was choking up there. And luckily that was the last sentence of my speech. And then a year later, in my final matric oral, we had to speak about something that we're passionate about and something that has purpose. And that was the first time that I spoke to my class, and I said, I'm wanting to do this race. I've got this lung condition, and just explained to them what it was and what I was wanting to do. But I hadn't worked emotionally through that. So those 18 years before that, I wasn't happy with anybody knowing that I had this condition. And I cried that entire oral. And I just stood in front of the class, bawling my eyes out. I thought I ruined my matric mark. And I had to go through that process of accepting this is who I am, and this is the challenges that I face. And I don't need to see it as something holding me back. It's something that has allowed me to have so many more opportunities just by accepting it and going to go on to do the epic and things like that. It's been something that's empowered me, and it's been a blessing in a way. I would not have had the opportunities that I've had if I didn't have the condition. And it's only once I worked through that emotionally and accepted it and got to the point where I could speak about it publicly that that was the switch. That was okay. this isn't actually something so terrible. It was like a whip, a quiver and my arrow in my quiver. It wasn't like a ball on my foot dragging me down. I mean, yes, there was still the challenges, but yeah, it was still, it was something I had to work through.
Yeah, you just going back to that real difficulty with sharing and feeling, all those mixed feelings about how is this going to come across, or people are going to pity me, or whatever. And so you're holding this inside, like this big secret. But you were still quite, it sounds like, in a way, quite confident. And courageous, and you had these like, let me find the opportunities. And not so, am I assuming right, like you were able to talk about it at home? Were you open about it with certain people, but it was more with your peers, school people your age, that kind of thing, sort of the outside circle that you didn't want to know, but you had an inner circle where it was communicated about?
Yeah, so exactly that. So my family and so my immediate family, obviously, like my greater family, they knew about the condition, everything, and was something that was discussed openly. If I would have to have, since I was a youngster, I'd have to have physio every evening, or I'd have to take like 40 tablets a day, and like you can't really be like hide that from your family, So from that perspective, it was out in the open, but my parents never spoke about the negative aspects. Like if there was something that cropped up that we had to deal with, we would deal with it, but we wouldn't go to the point of saying, oh, like you have this life expectancy, this is the bad thing that can happen. So like my doctors, they would always speak about positive things. So they wouldn't say like, if you go to university, they'd say when you go to university. So there's always within my family and within that, like that support structure, it's always a very strong positive outlook, and that whole like you said, like being courageous, or looking at the positive. Whereas so I try to emulate that positive energy within my peers, and I didn't feel they needed to know. On the sports field, there was always that sense of like when being picked for sports teams, or like to go play soccer and that kind of thing. They're always like, when it came to picking the team, I always got very nervous, or like I always felt that I had to prove myself, and I'd always give that extra, like like when I had this like mentality, like when you playing sport or something, you're doing it. It's like it's do or die. It's like you give everything you got. But then I've always been extremely competitive, and I've always been, and always put pressure on myself. I don't know if it goes back to having to prove myself because of CF, but I've always I'll push myself beyond what is expected, and sometimes to my own detriment, where it's just like, it is absolutely, like, thinking back, yes, it's not that critical, like it's just a game. But to me, it was like, it was absolutely, that was it. That was like literally do or die. And that's just the way I was perceived. So you could say I was a bit of an overachiever. But yeah, I was just always have been competitive, whether it was like a game of tiddlywinks or something like that. I don't know if that really answers your question or not.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, I wonder if you had to go back to your 13-year-old self, now with what you're knowing and with what you've experienced, or just do you see other people going through, would you tell yourself anything different?
I probably would have told them yes and no. I wouldn't have burdened myself so much that I couldn't know. But so also there's just in general, when you're working with these difficult things, like, so my parents would always say, everybody has something, and it's whether, for example, someone's got anxiety about something, or they've got, someone has to wear glasses. It's everybody has something, and it's, you can't hang up on that fact your entire life. You can move around those kind of obstacles, and also when it comes to learning different things at different times in your life, like my parents would always teach me that it's like a pendulum, and a pendulum swings like left to right, and you are going through different things at different times, and everybody else has different pendulums. So nobody's swinging at the same rhythm. So you might be dealing through something difficult at one time, say it's depression or like meaning and purpose, and you see your friend who's like excelling and doing extremely well. It's, yes, maybe they're doing very well then, but they haven't dealt with you dealing with at that very time. And going back to your question, it's like when I dealt with it, it was the right time for me to deal with it. So maybe if I was younger, I wouldn't have been mature enough to, it may have affected my outlook more because I was still developing my thought processes. Mm-hmm. So when I was like 17, 18, I was mature enough at that time to deal with it. So like, that saying, everything happens for a reason. So I would say, if from that perspective, no. It was once I had developed as a person and worked through it, I was ready to talk about it. But like I said, looking back, I shouldn't have held onto it so much. I should have just accepted, it's life. I don't need to be afraid of this.
I mean, I love that. What did you say? Everybody's swinging at a different rate, your pendulum. Yeah. And I think that's such a powerful lesson to learn, isn't it, from an early age, is that everybody has their own story. And you could be seeing all the highs out there, especially with social media. That's what people pop on there all the time. And it's all these successes and greatnesses and achievements and wonderful, happy people. But to learn from an early stage that that's not the whole picture. And it may just be at a different time and rhythm to what you're going through now. But don't worry, your bit will come.
Yes.
And theirs will change. And so that's powerful.
Yeah, there was a guy in my class, and this was very, very true. So he always was an average student, very like just like part of the, just like part of the class and like never an overachiever. But when it came to matric, he suddenly blossomed. He was just like went from like this average person to like an A-level student, getting straight A's in 8 subjects, and then went to university and on the dean's list. But when he was a child, he was just like an average child. And it's like when it was his time to blossom, he blossomed. And it's like your time will come. Just hang in there. It will come. And it's. But then again, in the same breath, it's don't sit and wait for that pendulum. You still got to. You can't just have like I want to be this and it'll happen. You still got to put in the hard work. So like. Going back to my life, if I didn't look after my health as well when I was younger and growing up, I would never be in a position where I am to be able to do the things that I did later in life. So there is still having those goals and working on it continuously. And so it is a difficult one between having that goal in mind and knowing that it's your right time. And when it comes together and it's sitting in the middle and it's not swinging far left, far right, then it's like then you found your purpose or your purpose, your passion. I think that's something that most people my age or struggle with. What am I doing with my life?
Well, I think that's a pendulum swing as well, because that comes back at different stages in your life. You achieve goals and then you might drop again and go, oh, but what next? I feel a bit purposeless now. And I don't, it's a youth issue. It's a middle age crisis issue. It's, and it hits people at various times, which aren't these like standard, or we expect this here and expect this there. It just, It just does. It does happen. And yeah, being able to sort of have that goal and purpose, or work out how to find it again, or work out how to be okay while you don't have it, while you momentarily don't have it, I think is something interesting and often where the challenge is.
So in terms of last year, I also asked in tourism, so I lost my job. I had to move back in with my parents and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I'm like just like, and also being high risk. It's not like I could go socialize with friends. And it was kind of like, what am I doing with my life? I'm literally sitting at home doing nothing. And I'm just getting sick. And it's just like, I was in this very negative space where it's like, this, I don't see anybody. Like if I were to die, then nothing would happen, like it would be like, and like, there's no purpose of me being here. And then I did a public speaking course, high impact public speaking course with Andre de Toy. And part of the things that I was talking about was the very same thing, like choosing the wrong wolf and like finding your what you want to do in life. And those are the very things that I was talking about. And it made me reflect and look at myself and say, you know what, like, yes, I'm going through a bad patch at the moment, but which wolf am I feeding? And I realized in myself that I took my very own advice, I want to change this. So then I set like another challenge that I wanted to do and set a date for it and started training for it. And also launched my public speaking career. And when it came to this year, I said, okay, I'm changing this year. I'm making this year work. And I'm changing my mindset. I'm feeding a different wolf, and I'm wanting to create what I want for myself, and not being in that place of, everything's going badly for me. I'm like extremely sick. I've lost my job. I don't, and it was just like that mindset of, let's change this. Let's make let's create that purpose for myself, or what excites me. So like the next challenge that I'm planning to do is an Everesting attempt. So basically it's picking a hill and you cycle laps of that hill over and over until you get the height of Everest. There's another guy with the condition who's done it, but he's got access to this life-changing drug which allowed him to do it. I'm not going to go into that now, but basically it would be cycling for 17 hours continuously up 9 Table Mountains, just as a mental kind of thing with you. Yeah. So it's going to be incredibly difficult. But you have to have these ambitions. You have to get out of your comfort zone. It's like, and that's where you grow.
I'm speechless. Sorry. I'm still struggling with like riding up 1 Table Mountain, but 9. It's not just in the moment that you make a decision and, you start building the capacity for something and achieve, but you've said a few times, but it's been ongoing. You've been looking after your health. You've been looking after X, Y, and Z, and then that builds up to being able to achieve where you are now and to continue to be able to achieve. This podcast is called RTB, so it's Resilience Toolbox. And the concept is, tools go rusty if you don't use them. So to identify your tools and then nurture them and use them, because they will incrementally make you stronger. And I think, I want to say, your positive mindset, this being able to sort of roll yourself back and remind yourself going, oh, good wolf, bad wolf. Let's listen to the good wolf. Let's keep that positive mindset. That sounds like it's almost an automatic, habitual thing for you now. And I just wonder, I'm thinking, those people out there who don't have that, like what is your advice to help somebody create that isn't an automatic default space?
When it comes to something that you wanted to do, or you set your goal, you have to know your why, or you have to know for yourself why you want to do it. It's very well saying, oh, I want to achieve this, or I want to do this. But if you don't know why you're doing it, that will get you through that difficult part of when you want to fail, when you want to give up. those difficult parts of saying, this is beyond me. This is too big. And it's a very personal thing. It's what is your why? Choose what you're wanting to do. So you commit to what you're doing, you write it down, or whatever it is, you put it out there and say, this is what I'm doing. And then the second step is putting a plan in place, how you're going to get there. So what that does is when you make like a weekly plan or a structure of how you're going to get there. So by doing that is you make yourself accountable to achieve little micro goals. And you get little dopamine kicks. Okay, you've done this for this week. You've just crossed that off. You've crossed that off. And that's all building up to that bigger plan. It doesn't happen overnight. Another step is nothing goes according to the plan. So be able to be flexible and have a contingency plan. How are you going to get around these little obstacles? So for example, I'm training for something and I get sick. I'm not going to be worried about, I'm missing out training or I'm not doing this. That is a sign. That's saying, okay, there's something wrong here and I need to get past that before I can carry on and not be too set on, I have to make that up. You go, okay, well, this week or that's written off. And when it comes to that next week, that's a new week. And you start again to achieve that little micro goal. And if before you know it, and you look back and you say, oh, wow, I've come so far. And you say, how did I get there? And you look back, wait, I continuously worked at the same thing for a long period of time. When things popped up, you move around them and you manage and you adapt. It's never going to be easy, but it gets to a point where you look back and you go, I can't believe I got through this.
All right. Well, Jason, we've had a very interesting discussion, and I did pick out your 3 tools in there. Do you just want to remind us what your 3 tools for resilience as your recommendation for all of our listeners are?
Sure. Going back, it would be find your own why, because it's why you want to do it, not why somebody else. And then set a plan in place and make sure that you're accountable to the plan. So make little micro goals and then be ready to adapt and be flexible to where the plan doesn't go according to plan. So it's commit, set a plan in place, and then be adaptable and flexible.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. You've gone through a lot in your life, and you have an enormous amount to share with people. So I must say, I think, I don't know, there's a reason for everything. I think you said that earlier as well, and I'm sure you would be wonderfully informative and interesting for everybody in the tourism industry. But my word, am I glad that you've come to the public speaking side of things, because I think there's a lot of people that you can inspire and who would benefit from hearing your lessons. I want to know if someone wants to check you out, do you have a Facebook site or somewhere where they can find you?
So Instagram, Facebook. So if it's the same login, so Jason Funt Slot. So Jason VANTSLOT.
So to the listeners out there, I suggest you go and check out this crazy dude, his Everests and his Table Mountains and his incredible, crazy mad achievements. I'm so impressed with what you've achieved. And I thank you very much for the time that you've given today. And to the listeners, so as I always say, remember this is RTB, Resilience Toolbox. And so listen to this and think about which of the tools that Jason has spoken about, which of them resonate with you, and then use them. Don't let them go rusty. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful day.